Right now, somewhere in your backyard, within your driveway cracks, along your garden borders, or across your lawn, plants are growing that you have spent years attempting to eradicate. You have pulled them, sprayed them, and smothered them with layers of mulch. Yet every single spring they return. What if those very plants are actually more nutritious than anything currently growing inside your raised beds? What if the things you have been destroying are worth significantly more than the crops you have been carefully tending? This discussion focuses on 6 common weeds, plants you almost certainly already possess, and explains why they outperform conventional vegetable gardens regarding calories, vitamins, medicine, and one specific factor: no garden catalog will ever sell you. Zero input survival. These are plants that cost nothing, require nothing, and return every year regardless of whether you want them to or not. By the end of this analysis, you will never look at your lawn the same way again, and you will understand why those who are knowledgeable about these species have stopped buying seeds altogether. Dandelion. This is the plant you have been poisoning that is actually more nutritious than kale. Before the herbicide industry convinced an entire generation that a perfectly manicured lawn was the ultimate goal, the dandelion was considered a highly valuable crop. European settlers deliberately brought it to North America, planting it on purpose. Consider that for a moment. A plant that now receives applications of Roundup every spring was once carefully transported across an ocean as a vital food source. Here is the reason why. A mere 100 grams of dandelion greens, about a handful, contains 558% of your daily recommended intake of vitamin K. It possesses more beta-carotene than a carrot and more calcium per calorie than a glass of milk. Furthermore, every single part of the plant is edible. The leaves can be eaten in early spring before they become bitter. The flowers can be consumed raw or battered and fried. And the root can be roasted and ground as a coffee substitute or dried as a liver-supporting herbal remedy that retails for $12 a bag at health food stores. The comparison that truly matters is this. Spinach, one of the most celebrated superfoods in any garden, requires prepared soil, regular watering, protection from heat and bolting, and replanting every single season. In contrast, the dandelion requires absolutely nothing. It breaks through compacted soil, survives heavy frost, and produces from April through October. It returns every year from a taproot that extends 18 inches deep. You cannot kill it without the use of chemicals, which is exactly the point. Seed saving does not even apply here because the dandelion saves itself. Every white clock you blew on as a child is a sophisticated seed dispersal mechanism that ensures you will never run out. However, as impressive as the dandelion is, it consists mostly of vitamins. What follows is the weed that solves the one gap most survival gardens can never fill: purslane. This is the only land plant that provides you with omega-3s similar to fish. Most people who encounter purslane assume it is some kind of succulent that snuck into their garden bed, so they pull it out and toss it onto the compost heap. What they have just discarded is one of the most nutritious, complete, edible plants on the planet. Purslane contains between 300 to 400 milliliters of alpha-linolenic acid per 100-gram serving. That represents more omega-3 fatty acids than any other leafy green plant on Earth. To put that into context, most individuals spend $20 to $30 a month on fish oil supplements to reach that number. Purslane provides it to you for free from your garden bed, and it will grow back next week without any effort on your part. What makes purslane genuinely remarkable for food security is its status as a C4 photosynthesis plant. This means it thrives in conditions that typically kill conventional vegetables, such as drought, extreme heat, poor soil, and total neglect. While your tomatoes are wilting in August and your lettuce has bolted into bitterness, purslane is at its peak growth. It actually desires the conditions that stress every other plant you are growing. You can eat it raw in salads, where it has a mild, slightly lemony flavor, or you can sauté it in oil, add it to soups, or pickle it. In Turkey and Greece, it has been a cultivated crop for centuries. In the Middle East, it is called bakle and treated as a delicacy. In your garden, it is currently being thrown in the trash. The calorie math is interesting as well. While purslane won't win on raw calories at around 16 calories per 100 grams, its micronutrient and omega-3 density means it fills gaps that your potatoes, squash, and beans cannot. It is the supplement you are already growing and destroying. And if purslane is the supplement, the next entry is the protein source that has been hiding in plain sight. Lamb's quarters. This is the forgotten grain crop that outperforms spinach in terms of protein. You have likely seen it. Pale green leaves with a powdery white coating on new growth, reaching waist height in any disturbed soil. It looks like it shouldn't be edible. It looks like a weed in the most mundane sense of the word. Yet, it is one of the most important food plants in pre-agricultural North America. Native American tribes across the continent cultivated lamb's quarters intentionally, harvesting both the leaves and the seeds. The seeds are tiny and black, similar to quinoa, which makes sense because lamb's quarters and quinoa belong to the same plant family. Those seeds can be dried, ground into flour, or cooked whole like a grain. One mature plant produces tens of thousands of seeds in a single season. The leaves contain 4.2 grams of protein per 100 grams raw, which is more than spinach. They also deliver iron, calcium, riboflavin, and vitamins A and C. You can cook them exactly like spinach. They wilt down the same way, taste mild and earthy, and are actually more tender than most cultivated greens. The detail that makes lamb's quarters special from a survival standpoint is that it grows in disturbed soil, the kind found around construction sites, vacant lots, roadsides, and crucially, the edges of any garden that has been dug and amended. If you have been building raised beds, lamb's quarters is almost certainly already colonizing the border. It self-seeds so aggressively that once you have it forever, without doing anything. Most people growing spinach 20 feet away are spending money on seeds, preparing soil, managing slugs, and replanting every season. The lamb's quarters 3 feet from that bed is doing all of that for free. But the story gets more interesting because the next two weeds don't just feed you. They act as medicine, a dimension most survival garden content never touches. Wood sorrel. This is the vitamin C source growing in your lawn right now. Wood sorrel looks like clover with heart-shaped leaves. Most people who find it assume it is clover and ignore it. But it isn't clover, and you shouldn't ignore it. Wood sorrel gets its sour, citrusy flavor from oxalic acid, the same compound that makes rhubarb tart. That flavor is your indicator that it is one of the better wild sources of vitamin C available. Vitamin C is one of the first deficiencies that appears in diets that have shifted toward stored grains and starches. It was the reason sailors died of scurvy on long voyages, not starvation, but the absence of fresh plant material. Wood sorrel grows in partial shade, which makes it valuable in spaces where almost nothing else thrives. Under trees, along north-facing fence lines, and in the shadowed edges of garden beds, wood sorrel fills those dead zones. It is one of the first plants to produce new growth in spring and one of the last to die back in fall. You can eat it raw, add it to salads for brightness and acidity, or use it anywhere you would use lemon. Children instinctively eat it because of the sour taste, which tells you something about how well it is adapted to be recognized as food. Its seeds and roots are also edible. Like every other plant on this list, it returns on its own every year. However, wood sorrel is small and grows in patches. The next plant grows everywhere, produces enormous quantities of edible material, and does something for your soil that no vegetable in your raised bed can do. Clover. This is the nitrogen factory you have been mowing into nothing. Red clover and white clover are nitrogen-fixing legumes. This means their root systems host bacteria that pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and deposit it into the soil. This is the same biological process that makes beans valuable in rotation planting, except clover does it as a perennial over a much larger root area without you doing anything. A dense stand of clover in your lawn is actively improving the soil beneath it every single season. Before synthetic fertilizers existed, farmers planted clover specifically to restore depleted fields. It was a deliberate, valuable crop. Then, synthetic nitrogen made that unnecessary, and we started treating it as a weed. The edible profile is better than most people realize. Young clover leaves are edible raw, mildly grassy, and best in small quantities. The flowers, both red and white, are edible raw or dried. Red clover flowers have been used in herbal medicine for decades as a source of isoflavones, compounds studied for their effects on hormonal balance and cardiovascular health. Dried red clover flowers sell for $8 to $15 per ounce at herbal retailers, yet you can harvest them from your lawn for free. The seeds, tiny and numerous, can be sprouted indoors in winter for fresh greens when nothing is growing outside. Clover sprouts are mild, nutritious, and ready in 4 days. The plant will keep spreading, keep fixing nitrogen, and keep flowering without any intervention from you. But everything on this list so far, as useful as it is surpassed by what comes next, because the final weed produces food before anything else can, before your seeds have even germinated, and before your raised beds have thawed. It is the only plant on this list that functions as a full early spring survival crop. Chickweed. This is the spring superfood that arrives before your garden does. Chickweed, or Stellaria media, is the small, sprawling plant with tiny white, star-shaped flowers that appears in dense mats in late winter and very early spring. In most temperate climates, it starts growing in February or March, weeks before the last frost date, and weeks before any cultivated vegetable can be safely started outside. That timing is the survival advantage. In any food security scenario, the most dangerous period is late winter into early spring, the gap between depleted stores and the first harvest. Chickweed fills that gap. It grows when nothing else will, produces dense edible material with no inputs, and tastes genuinely good. Mild and slightly grassy, with a texture similar to baby spinach. Nutritionally, it delivers vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, and iron. It was historically used as a poultice for skin irritation and minor wounds, a practice backed by its demonstrated anti-inflammatory properties. It is one of the oldest documented edible weeds in European and American folk medicine. What makes chickweed particularly valuable in the system we have been building is that it grows in the same spaces as everything else on this list. Garden edges, lawn borders, and disturbed soil. It doesn't compete with your crops because it is finished and dying back by the time your summer crops need that space. It occupies the calendar gap no cultivated plant can reach. It self-seeds prolifically. One plant produces 800 seeds, and those seeds can remain viable in the soil for up to 10 years. Once chickweed finds your garden, it is part of your garden permanently, providing fresh greens every late winter for the rest of the time you grow food on that land. Now, step back and look at what we actually have here. 6 plants. Not one of them costs money. Not one of them requires seeds from a catalog, prepared soil, irrigation infrastructure, or any growing knowledge beyond being able to recognize them. Combined, they deliver omega-3, vitamin C, protein, calcium, iron, nitrogen fertility, early spring greens, summer abundance, and medicine. The average American household spends over $500 a year on lawn care, and a meaningful portion of that money goes toward killing exactly these plants. We are paying to destroy a free food system that has been trying to establish itself in our yards for decades. The deeper irony is this: the food system we are protecting our lawns to look acceptable for, the grocery store supply chain, the seed catalogs, and the fertilizer inputs, is the fragile one. It is the one that can fail. The weeds are the resilient ones. They have survived every ice age, every drought, and every agricultural revolution, and they will survive whatever comes next. The question isn't whether these plants can feed you. They already can. The question is whether you will let them. If you have been building out a garden this season, the next thing worth understanding is which cultivated crops actually complement what these weeds are already doing. The ones that fill the calorie and storage gaps without duplicating what is already growing wild. If this exploration of the hidden bounty in your backyard has changed the way you look at the weeds in your garden, please subscribe and like this video. We are dedicated to uncovering the history and natural resources that have been overlooked or intentionally buried. It is time to stop fighting nature and start Geo-trong your future. Our next deep dive into the Earth's hidden treasures will be opening soon.